Greetings. Apologies for being a little bit late. I was supposed to be on here at 12 o'clock, so I'm 8 minutes late. So apologies for that. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So today I want to talk to you about feeling undeserving, okay, worthiness, and why you feel like that. We just finished, or I just finished doing I did a workshop on Saturday around racial wellness, and we did a vision board. We did some vision work, and it was just really beautiful. But one of the themes that came up quite a lot when we were talking about, where folks are now, was the concept around, a lot of the conversation was about feeling like they don't deserve something, or they felt guilty about they just felt guilty about doing what they needed to do, about their self-care practice, about spending money on themselves and all of that. So yeah, I just wanted to come on and have a conversation about that. I mean, obviously we talked about it quite a lot in the workshop on Saturday. So I thought I would take, and I've had a bit more of a chance to think about it. I thought I would take that theme and just bring it to, to just have a conversation about it on here. But before I get on to that, just wanted to share a little bit of housekeeping. So tomorrow evening is the Sacred Sister Sanctuary. I also have an online monthly mastermind that I do, and at the moment in the sanctuary we are focusing on financial therapy, and we are reading The Black Woman Millionaire by Dr. Venus Opal Reese, which is an amazing book. And hi everyone, thanks for joining. And yeah, so what we're doing is I'm sort of taking like little themes and stuff out of the book as we read it, and then I'm kind of breaking it down even deeper, sharing my therapeutic experience, my personal experience around financial therapy, and then we're having conversations about it. So this week we're going to be talking about um, we're going to be talking about I think why people hide from money and what to do about it, how to make amends to yourself around hiding from money. So if you're interested in joining us for the financial therapy class, you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. I also have some spots open for my one-to-one sessions. So if you've been thinking about having one-to-one therapy, particularly with a cultural context as well, I'm very much about bringing that into the conversation because it is an important part of the process. Then yeah, so obviously click the link in my bio. You can find all the details about how you can work with me one on one in there as well. So okay, so let's get back to the tea. So for those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So I'm a racial trauma therapist, I'm a business coach, I'm also a retreat facilitator, and I mainly work with Black women, and I help them achieve unapologetic self love by exploring the relationship with self, the mother wound, and systems of oppression. So today I am talking about why is it that sometimes people feel like they're undeserving? Okay, why is it that people think that they're undeserving? And I would say, there are several layers to this conversation. And I think the first one, this obvious one based on what I do, is it's about you've internalized oppression. You've internalized your oppression. So if you think about a social level, whether you're talking about racism, or you're talking about patriarchy, misogyny, all of that kind of stuff, if you internalize all of that thinking, you're not gonna feel deserving of anything, because the system, has black women on the bottom of the pile. Okay, we're just supposed to show up and serve everybody else. We're not supposed to take care of ourselves. We're not supposed to indulge in anything that's luxury. We're not supposed to give ourselves time. We're not supposed to say no to other people. We're not supposed to set boundaries with other people. Okay, the system says you are a product. Okay, you are a product, and you need to be productive for everybody else. You need to serve everybody else. I was recently having a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago about the whole idea about grind culture and internalized capitalism. That's another thing that needs to be added to this whole thing of internalized oppression. All of these systems that have us exhausted and all the rest of it. I think sometimes we minimize how exhausting it is living under these systems, and I think we were able to have a conversation on Saturday at the workshop where we talked about what is internalized and what stories we tell ourselves that these systems say. So I think what's really really important about this, if you're feeling unworthy and you feel like you don't deserve, why do you feel undeserving and all the rest of it, just take some time to really think about what you've internalized. What is the story that you tell yourself that you've believed? What are the lies that you've taken on, from systems of oppression, whether it's racism, patriarchy, capitalism, all of that stuff? What is the story that you tell yourself from those systems that you've internalized? Okay, that is really really, that's having an impact on how you treat yourself, how you behave. Yeah, because it's gonna it's hard to avoid. It's very difficult to avoid that conversation, so give yourself permission. Okay, give yourself permission to have that conversation with yourself. The other thing that might be added to it, okay, is childhood neglect. If you were raised in a family where where you weren't allowed to have needs, you weren't allowed to speak up for yourself. A lot of the conversations that I hear is that a lot of parents, especially my parents' generation, their love language, the way that they showed love was through acts of service. So it's things like, they'll go to work, they'll put a roof over your head, they'll make sure that you got food on the table, which all of those things are important. And of course, we respect our parents for doing that. But what's missing is the emotional part of it, the emotional connection, the conversations around feeling loved, feeling nourished, feeling nurtured, and feeling cherished. And a lot of us didn't feel cherished. I know I didn't feel cherished. There's a difference between a parent going out to work and putting food on the table, to having somebody look you in the eye and tell you that they love you and give you a hug, touch and all of that kind of stuff. When you're growing up, um, is really important. Feeling like your parents care about you, being cared for in a way, in that way, is very, very different. And so if that is something, and again, these, if you think about it, from my parents' generation, my parents are from Jamaica. Okay, my parents are from Jamaica. So there's also a history of racial trauma, enslavement, all of that kind of stuff. And so when we think about how our ancestors were enslaved, when I think about when my ancestors were enslaved, again, that deprivation, okay, all of that conversation around being neglected and all the rest of it, that again, that's internalized, that's stuff that's been internalized, and that's how they were taught, so they've just passed it down. Okay, so there's a history, again, there's a history with in our community of deprivation. And so whilst our parents did the best that they could in that sense, there is still lacking for us in terms of the emotional neglect, and both can be true. It doesn't have to be one or the other, because people will sometimes jump up and say, oh, well, your parents did the best that they could, they were also victims. Yes, we know all of that in terms of under the system, we know that all of that, but they can still have done the best that they could, okay, and done all those things. But at the same time, you can still also acknowledge that you were also neglected at some level. Okay, and when you're neglected in that way, when you're neglected emotionally, that's also going to have an impact on how you feel about yourself. It's going to have an impact on how you feel about yourself. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining. It's going to have an impact on how you feel about yourself. You are going to feel undeserving. And that's how the system is set up. The systems of oppression are set up for us to feel so unworthy and so bad about ourselves, so bad about inhabiting these black body, okay, that we're easily controlled, we're easily manipulated, because we want to be feel like we're seen, we want to be visible, we want to feel like we matter and all the rest of it. So the systems of oppression, they might feed us little crumbs here and there, or we try to conform to what's happening in this system. One, because we think that maybe it's going to keep us safe, and number two, we might think that, oh, maybe we'll get some trinkets if we conform to the system. But all of these things are ways that we end up having to abandon ourselves for other systems, other people. Okay, we abandon ourselves for the systems and other people in order to conform, in order to have some sort of sense of belonging. you know, and that's not a good setup for for relationships. It's not a good setup for a relationship with yourself or with others, because if you're always having to abandon yourself, okay, and do what other people say in order to you have for you to have a feel a sense of belonging, there's going to be resentment. There's going to be resentment there, and it's never going to work. It's never going to work. You're always going to be angry. You're always going to feel resentful. But this feeling of unworthiness, this feeling of undeserving, is something that really, really does need to be looked at. It really does need to be unpacked. It really does need to be explored, because there are so many layers to it. There are so many layers to it, and you can't just, it's not just one specific thing. Okay, it's not just one specific thing. Hi, Amina. Thanks for joining. It's not just one specific thing. There are so many different ways that feeling like we don't deserve something shows up in our lives. But it's for us to really unpack, because it's an individual thing. It's an individual, personal thing. The other thing that causes us to feel unworthy is lack of representation. Okay, you're not seeing yourself. You're not seeing yourself. This is one of the reasons why I do the work I do, actually, because there was a time where a lot of people would think, oh, what you doing therapy for? Therapy is for white people. Therapy is not for black people. And people think, and because the training and stuff that a lot of therapists do it doesn't really go that in depth into how systems of oppression. They have a couple of diversity week, as part of the training, and they lump everything all together. So if you're marginalized in any way, if you're gay, if you've got disabilities, if you're a person of color, whatever it is, they kind of tend to lump all of that into diversity week, and so you don't really get the depth. The reason why I do what I do is because I've done a lot of extra training. I've read a lot of additional books. I've obviously gone through my own process. So you not only are you getting, my professional experience as a therapist, but also my life experience as a black woman, and the reading and stuff that I've done. And when you're not represented in these institutions, when you're not represented in the spaces that you go to, and I hear this a lot from my clients, before they started working with me, a lot of them went to these spaces, that were very white middle class, and no one was really having deep conversations about race, not with any real depth, you know and a lot of them don't, they don't want to have that conversation because they're not equipped to deal with it. They're not culturally competent in order to deal with that, so that lack of representation, and it goes across the board. We're not just talking about therapy, we're talking about education. We're talking about, there are so many things where there's the media, entertainment. There are so many different areas where we're not represented. And if you're not represented, okay, if you're not represented, you are going to internalize that I don't deserve. Yeah, I don't deserve to have this. I don't deserve to take up space in that place. I don't deserve a seat at the table because I can't see myself. I don't deserve, because you're not seeing yourself. You're not seeing yourself. And when you do start to sit in these spaces where people are having conversations and you're seeing yourself, it's a very different energy. It's a very different energy. It's a very different conversation. People show up differently, and you're going to get a different result. You are going to get a different result with your healing process, because your blackness, your black femininity, and I talk about blackness within the context of so many different things, whether it's spirituality, whether it's your gender, whether it's your, whatever it is. I always bring in that context, because if you're not having that conversation, okay, then you're missing out. Okay, racism and oppression, it plays out in, it's Neely Fuller's work. He talks about racism and oppression being systemic. Okay, and he says that there's 9 areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Yeah, economics and economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So you can't have a conversation about anything without bringing in the exploration of, okay, well, how does oppression play a role in this? So when you talk about feeling undeserving, okay, and this is actually a beef that I have with people talking about imposter syndrome. You know, when it comes to when it comes to us, when it comes to black women and imposter syndrome, okay, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist for us. And the reason I say that is because imposter syndrome for us is really internalized depression. Okay, imposter syndrome when it comes to us is about internalized oppression. It's about um not feeling like we're feeling fake. We feel like we don't deserve it. We feel like you know, that we can't do this and all the rest of it. It is Amina, I'm calling you out. Listen, I'm dropping some gems. Intern imposter syndrome for black people, okay, is internalized depression. It's internalized depression. I always get irritated when I hear people when I hear black people talking about imposter syndrome, okay? It's an opportunity then to bypass the conversation about race. Okay? You can bypass the conversation about race if you're talking about imposter syndrome. But it's internalized depression. When you're having a conversation about internalized depression, and it becomes very different. It becomes very, very different. Okay, so when we're talking about lack of representation, whatever industry you're in at work or whatever's going on for you, okay, think about that. What comes up for you? What story do you tell yourself? Okay, because there's no representation. Before I started really getting into this work and doing it, I would, if there was lack of representation, if I couldn't see myself, I would immediately go into shame. I would immediately go into shame, thinking to myself, "Oh well, the reason why I'm not represented is because I'm not good enough." That's the story that I used to tell myself. That was what was going on in my unconscious. Okay, the reason why this stuff is important is because when it's going on in your unconscious, we get so used to it, and we don't know that that story is going on. That's why you need to out the conversation so that you can go, actually, do I really think like that? Is that the story that I'm telling myself? And you'll normally find that at some level, that conversation is being played out. That conversation is being played out at some level. I feel unworthy because I can't see myself. I haven't you know, I'm not I don't want to be part of the system, but I feel like if I don't kind of abandon myself, if I don't do what is in alignment with kind of you know, white supremacy values and all of that, and a lot of this happens unconsciously. If I'm not in alignment with that, then you know, they're going to think that I'm the angry black woman, or they're going to think that you know, I'm one of the difficult ones or whatever, you know. So Amin is saying it's the internal scripts or stories. Exactly. And honestly, it's poisonous. It's poisonous. But unless you're having that conversation, you're not gonna know. You're not gonna know. You're not gonna understand. You're not gonna really understand that's what's going on. And the whole point of doing this therapeutically is to bring the unconscious into the conscious, because you can't change it if you're not actually making it conscious. If it's in your subconscious, you don't even really know that it's happening. You don't even know that that story's even there. You're just acting it out. You're just trying to keep yourself safe. You're just trying to assimilate with what's going on. You're just doing what you think the other person needs you to do, so that you can be accepted, so that you can belong, and all the rest of it. You know, so again, just thinking about the whole idea of unworthiness and all of that, ask yourself those questions, unpack what needs to be unpacked, and really just think about, okay, is what I'm thinking about myself, is that really my stuff? Is that really my stuff, or does it belong to other people? You know, so somebody else is saying, what's helped me with accepting it is taking account. Exactly. You have to take accountability for your the story that you tell yourself. The system is going to do what the system is going to do. Okay, the system's job is to continue to make you feel so shit about yourself and your blackness that you just, all you want to do is assimilate. You want to, oh, please accept me. So you're going to do whatever you need to do, whatever behaviors, whatever language, whatever physical things that you need to do to be accepted under the system. You're going to do that because you're going to want to be safe. You're going to want to belong. You're going to want, if you're at work, you want promotion. You want people to like you. All of that stuff. You have to accept accountability for how you show up in those spaces. You have to take accountability for how you speak. You have to accountability for how you dress. You have to take accountability for the story, what you ingest. Okay, because you can't change them, but you can change your response to it. That's how you take your power back. That's how you start to become deserving. I really, really saw the light bulbs start to go off in the ladies in the group when we started having these conversations about, feeling undeserving and where does it come from and how much of it comes from parents and how much of it comes from internalized racism, how much of it comes from patriarchy, all of that sort of stuff. When you start to really unpack it, then you can start to separate. Actually, this is my stuff, and that stuff ain't got nothing to do with me. This is my stuff, and that other stuff ain't got nothing to do with me. And it's about also being compassionate to yourself. It's about being compassionate to yourself. It's not about beating yourself up because you've done certain things in the name of trying to belong or be safe or whatever. Because again, if you're doing it unconsciously, that's how a lot of us. That's how the system operates. So it's about being kind to yourself. It's about being, being compassionate, and understanding that actually now I can make a difference. Once I start to take accountability for myself and start to take more accountability for my thinking and do more critical thinking, you know. Hi Lydia. So Lydia is saying dysfunction also happens when you don't assimilate. Then you become the difficult black woman. Yeah, but this is the reason why you need to be in spaces where you can process what you need to process. Dysfunction happens in the group when you don't assimilate. If you're in a toxic group, of course they're going to act up because then you're the difficult black woman, you're the angry black woman, and all the rest of it. But that's why being in a group, being in having a therapist, being in a recovery group, whatever it is, you need to be in a group with other people where you can unpack that stuff. So it doesn't matter because that's their dysfunction. Dysfunction will happen in the group of people that expect you, that demand that you assimilate. Again, that's how the system operates because they don't want black women to speak up. They don't want us to speak up. So Amina's saying the angry black woman is a stereotype we all try to not get. But see, the thing, you know what? The angry black woman thing, I did a live stream a few months ago, and I called it, I think it was called something like I'm the proud angry black woman or something like that. And I really break down that conversation around the angry black woman because there are 101 reasons why we're supposed to be angry. We have a right to be angry, but again, it's the system's way of trying to blame us, trying to control us, trying to shame us, for expressing how we feel. Anger is a natural reaction. So this also comes again, this links into the whole thing about being undeserving. We don't even feel like we deserve to be angry. Despite being on the bottom of the rung on so many things, despite not being underrepresented, despite being underpaid, despite being abused, despite being hypersexualized, but yet we're not supposed to be angry. Again, this form of silencing again is hurting us. It's making black women ill. It's making black women ill. It's making us unwell when we don't speak up about this. But the difference is, it's having a safe space to be able to talk about this stuff. Yeah? It's having a safe space to be able to understand that, it's okay for me to be angry. Amina's saying I'm coming for her. Do you know what? Then one of the next workshops that I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I'm going to do on anger. Yeah, I'm gonna do one on anger and the angry black woman because I think that, anger is your friend. Anger is your friend. Yeah, anger is the part of you that loves you. Anger is the part of you that's saying to you, stop putting up with shit from folks. Yeah? Anger is the part of you that wants you to get well. It's telling you your boundaries are being crossed and you need to tell folks to move. That's what the anger is there for. But there's become a stigma attached to us being angry because the system doesn't want us to be angry. The system doesn't want us to be angry because the system is afraid that we are going to do to white folk what they did to us. Yeah? The system doesn't want black women to be angry. Doesn't want black men to be, doesn't want us to be angry because they think that we're going to do to them what they did to us. But that's not really in our, that's not in our nature. That's not in our nature. But that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't that we shouldn't feel angry. The difference is we need to learn how to process it. We need to learn how to understand our anger. We need to learn how to um, understand what our anger is trying to tell us. Yeah, we need to understand what our anger is trying to tell us. That's the difference. It's not the anger per se that's the issue. It's the fact that so many of us as well,